Are you looking to travel to Cuba independently, without a tour guide, without somebody holding your hand? If so, these 10 tips are going to be invaluable. What's up world, it's John, and this is going to be my final video on Cuba. I've created a pretty big Cuba playlist, a lot of vlogs on there, some other tips videos, so definitely check that playlist out. I'm going to link to it down below, but let's jump right into my top 10 tips to have a good time in Cuba. Tip number 1, download the app Maps.me. I did not have this app on my phone. I met so many people in Cuba who already had it. They had full maps of Havana and Trinidad. And while I was trying to figure out where I was going in Havana the old-fashioned way by trying to remember landmarks and such, they had turn-by-turn directions already set up. I even remember one experience where I had somebody in a colectivo with me giving directions to a cab driver using Maps.me. Definitely don't forget to download this. You cannot download it when you're in Cuba. I tried. Tip number 2, this involves Havana Airport and your arrival. When you get to the arrivals area after customs, don't stay on the ground floor. Instead, look for the staircase. It should be an escalator, but it's probably not going to be working. So take the stairs up to the second floor to departures. Find the Cadeco window, that's the money exchange. There'll be no line there. On the first floor, I guarantee you, you're gonna be waiting some time to exchange your money. Then, instead of going back downstairs to arrivals, where there's gonna be a line for taxis, instead, look for a taxi dropping somebody off on the second floor at departures. I tested both of these moves, and I got in and out of Havana Airport really fast. Tip number 3, get yourself some local currency, the MONEDA NACIONAL. Now this is different than the standard currency that most tourists get, the CUC, which you're gonna get at the airport or any exchange house if you ask for it. However, at any Codeca, you can also get one of these, the MONEDA NACIONAL, and this is one of the coolest bills I have ever seen, a Che Guevara 3 peso note. Now, this gives you access to local markets, local places where they'll only accept money in this form. It is so much cheaper. The actual exchange rate is 24 CUC to 1 CUC, or about 24 of these to $1 US. You can pay for collectivos, local groceries, local items, and I guarantee you most other tourists are not going to be thinking of doing this. And I actually got this idea from a great book called The Real Havana, and I've emailed the author back and forth before, an amazing guy. I'm gonna leave a link down below if you wanna check that book out. It's something like $4 on Kindle and worth every single penny. Let's move on to number 4. This one's for the Americans out there, and I know there's quite a few of you watching this video right now. Do not bring US dollars to Cuba. I repeat, do not bring US dollars to Cuba. You will get a 10% penalty exchanging that money anywhere in the country. Instead, change your money to Canadian dollars or euros in advance before you go. I'm gonna recommend euros personally because the exchange rate in Cuba, 1 CUC to 1 euro is 1 to 1, and it is a lot easier to keep track of your money that way. I did Canadian dollars, and at times it did get a little bit confusing for me. Numero 5, check your receipt closely at restaurants. This one happened to me a couple of times. I saw a beer, I saw a drink, I saw an appetizer that was not on my bill. The first time I thought it was a coincidence, the second or third time started to be a bit of a pattern. So make sure that if you have an item on your receipt, you actually paid for it. Tip number 6, food selection. I never got sick in Cuba, but I did meet some people who got food poisoning, and one rule of thumb I use, not just Cuba, but anywhere around the world, if you're walking around looking for a restaurant, you don't have any recommendations, look for a place that is either pretty full or it has locals eating there already. They're generally not going to be going somewhere that's going to get them sick already, so do be careful in Cuba. Moving right along, number 7, Spanish. And we're talking about learning some Spanish before you get to Cuba. I've been to different countries in Latin America, and Cuba had by far the least amount of English speakers. I'm not saying you have to be fluent, but I do think if you learned a couple of useful phrases, at least how to count to 100, some basic things, you'll be fine in Cuba. If you need some advice on how to learn Spanish, I have a method that I've used online. I'm gonna put a link to it in the description below. It's a YouTube video I made about studying Spanish. If not, you can always try Pimislor, Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, talking to your neighbor who speaks Spanish, whatever works for you, but definitely don't go to Cuba with only English. At least know something. Tip number 8, stay in Casa Particulares over hotels. Now, there aren't that many hotels in Cuba right now outside of resorts and some of the higher end properties, but I think you're gonna get a far more authentic experience staying at these bed and breakfast style places where you're gonna meet real Cuban people who are going about their daily lives and also trying to make a little bit of income on the side. You usually get a nice breakfast included in the price, and you can also locate these casas by the blue anchor that will be on their door, and you don't always have to have reservations, especially during non-peak seasons. Feel free to get to a new city, just walk around trying to locate those blue anchors on doors and see what kind of places you can stay at. Number 9, and this is if you're a little bit more adventurous and you want to meet some real Cuban people out at night. Don't go to all the popular tourist bars in Havana. Don't go to all the popular tourist bars in Trinidad, Santiago, any other city. If you're in Havana, get a beer, go to the Malecon. You're gonna see a lot of local people hanging out in groups, usually pretty friendly if you want to approach them, try to talk to them. In other cities, just go to a town square. If you wanna really have a night out like Cuban people do, just go outside and be part of the city. Number 10, and this isn't so much of a tip, more of a suggestion for you, something to think about. Why don't you bring some gifts, some small items from wherever you are in the world to Cuba and give them to people that you've enjoyed their time or you've enjoyed their company. I brought small postcards from New York City, for example. A lot of Cuban people are never going to leave that island. They want to know more about the world, and it's very difficult. They're very cut off. Internet use is very low. There's not a lot of internet available, so why not bring the world to them? Bring some small gifts. You're going to make people's day, trust me. If you enjoyed the tips in this video, I want to encourage you to check out my Cuba playlist, which I'm going to be linking to right here. And definitely subscribe to Here Be Barr by clicking on that good-looking guy's face right here. You've got travel vlogs, travel tips videos weekly coming out, looking to help you guys travel smarter. If you already subscribed, I do want to ask you for one favor. Definitely hit the bell icon down below, and it's going to allow you to get email updates every time I publish a new video. Be a part of where you go. Thanks for watching.